it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of your favorite swimbait podcast, Scales and Tails, episode 156 today. And so in the last episode 153, I think we had a gentleman from California, and we were joined yet again with another guy from California. And honestly, Connor, you're 20 years old, right?
I am.
Dude, so you're one of the younger guys that I've had on in the last while. I've talked to a lot of people right around my age and a little bit older. I'm only 3 years older than you, but dude,
Okay.
it's kind of it's badass to see, like you and I were just talking before, and how you see younger kids getting into it now too. But
100%.
I feel like for some reason it's like 90% older guys that are into swim bait fishing for whatever reason. Not saying that there's a problem or anything with that, but it's cool to see guys my age, a little bit younger than me, like still into it. When I had first gotten into it, there was a couple of young kids who were doing it, and then for whatever reason they just kind of faded out of it, and now it just seems like it's a bunch of old guys who do it, which, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that.
100%.
It's gonna
100%.
be cool to hear your perspective and kind of hear your side of the culture and stuff, especially
Yeah.
being in California. It's gonna be kind of awesome to hear your stories. But Connor, I guess before we get too heavily into it, you got to introduce us to yourself, and then we'll get right into it, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Connor. I fish Lake Casitas a lot. I also work out there at the boat rentals. So I get to talk to a lot of the people and kind of just see what how the bite is and everything out there. And it's it's an amazing place. And I strictly just fish Casitas. I'm hunting that double digit out there. It's been a tough bite in the past few years, but it's working its way back up to those big bass like it used to be.
That's awesome, dude. It's awesome that you work there, so you're kind of double dipping a little bit. You can kind of hear about the
Yeah, I'm
bite
literally
and see if
out
you
there
want to go
every
after
day.
work.
Yeah, I'm out there every single day.
That's awesome, dude. Here's the big question: do you rent a boat, or do you have your own little rig that you take out there?
I have my own little rig that I take out there, but sometimes occasionally before work or something, I'll hop on a little skiff and just go make a couple of casts.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. That's sick. That's
Yeah,
the life
absolutely.
right there.
100%.
So I guess since we're talking about it right now, talking about your lake and kind of where you work and stuff, alluding to what we talked about before we started to record, do you
Yeah.
see a lot of guys out there fishing swim baits, whether they're your age, younger, older, whatever? Do you see guys
Oh
fishing
yeah.
swim baits outside of you?
Oh yeah, everywhere. I mean, a lot of guys they won't put in as much time as I would. Like I can go out there and throw a big bait for 14 hours straight and
Yeah.
not get a bite and still feel like I'm gonna get a bite that next cast. But there is a lot more guys that are starting to pick up a big bait and fish them in their tournaments and just have a swim bait on their deck with them. They just don't just strictly fish it. They'll throw a Texas rig and a worm and
Mhm.
Senkos and stuff like that.
Right. Well, dang, dude. So that's kind of, I don't know. When I think of California, I think everybody's got, a mag draft and S waiver at the very least, and you're just any
Yeah,
public pond you go to, everybody's fishing it. But by the sounds of it, it's not. Maybe it used to be like that at one point in time, but it seems like the tournament fishing in California is like super popular, and I had no idea about
it
that.
really is. Yeah, it really is. There's this last weekend we just had a tournament and there was a 30-pound bag that won it. It was
Damn.
28 pounds, but um, yeah, there's been some good fish coming out of the lake recently. I recently got my personal best at about a month ago. Um, just bottom bouncing that Tyrant 8. Um, but the big fish are starting to kind of make their way back up in that 10 to 11 pound range. You're seeing a lot more of them. Um, I want to get one that's over 10
Hmm.
one day. I had one on once and she came off, but I'm looking for her. I keep going back to that spot. I've seen her once after, but haven't gotten her to commit again.
Dang, dude. So I guess what we're talking about now, we'll throw it back all the way. When was your first year throwing swim baits, and kind of how did you get into it being from California?
Well, I started back in 2017.
Damn. Okay.
One of my buddies, my little brother, his buddy at a pond, and we went and fished it, and I was just tossing a fluke, and I got my first bite, and I was hooked. From then on, I wanted to just go out there and fish as often as I could, and started fishing Lake Casitas. And my first fish that ever came out of that lake was 5.9 pounds, and that was back when I was fishing shad. But after that, I didn't want to fish anywhere else, and from then, I was just strictly fishing Casitas, and I still am today.
Dang, dude. So that fish you caught, your 5'9", was my last PB up here in Michigan.
Okay, yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah,
Absolutely
100%.
insane,
I've
dude.
talked to a lot of guys from the northern side of fishing, and it's definitely a big difference from here in SoCal.
Yeah, yeah, dude, for sure. But dude, 2017, that's crazy. So what, you were 14, 15?
Yeah, yeah,
Dang, that's so
14.
awesome. So
Yeah.
what was your first like actual swim bait? Like something you would consider a swim bait
First
now?
swim bait fish. It's pretty crazy. It was actually a battle shad 7.5 fish. I had recently found out about working class zero, and it was just after they had their first head harness drop. And I had went out to Casitas, and I saw the battle shad in the water, and that someone had just lost that day. And I
No.
went out there and walked in the water, even though you're not supposed to, and grabbed it. And yeah, I continued to fish it. And I don't know if you have any cameras or anything, but I can send you a picture of this battle shad. I put in some work with it, and it's absolutely demolished. And beforehand, I didn't really know how to take care of a bait, and so this thing's just mauled.
Dude, that's crazy the way you found that. That's a story right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, absolutely. It's super cool. It was like a 3 pound bass, but it was the coolest thing.
That's awesome. Do you have any idea who lost that bait?
I think I do. One of the people that worked at the boat rentals at the time before I worked there, when I had found it, it was their cousin that had lost it. And I
Dang.
was like, "You're not just gonna walk out there and get it?" And I walked out there real quick. I wasn't gonna hesitate for a second.
Dude, the fact that you know who lost it makes it even that, that much
I
funnier.
know it was pretty funny because once I caught that fish, I just rubbed it in their face. I was like, "Man, you could have had that fish."
You could have had your bait still.
That too.
Oh, dude, that's hilarious. So that was your,
Absolutely.
how big did you say that fish was?
About 3.5 pounds.
Dang. So 3.5 pounder on the 7.5 inch battle shad. That was your
Yeah.
first like true swim bait
That
fish.
was the true swim bait fish, my very first one. And yeah, I really messed that fish up. That fish, man, his mouth was all torn up because I didn't really know how to rig the harness
Hmm.
on there because I had to replace the hook and I didn't crimp it down.
Oh
And the
yeah, yeah.
hook popped out. And so it got all twisted up in the mid fight and everything. And the battle shad was almost like a line through, just going up and down the line and everything. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was a mess, but we learned from there.
Dang, dude. So what was your setup at that point in time?
I was using what was it, a Cardiff 300, and I was using the Akuma Guide Select.
Okay, classic starter setup right there.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And I think I was using 20-pound P line.
I've got three words for you. Lake Pro Tackle. Lake Pro Tackle has all the gear you need to be ready to have a successful day on the water. Friends of the podcast receive 10% off your orders while using code SCALES at checkout. Checking out with code SCALES not only saves you guys some money, but it also helps me host more giveaways to give back to you guys, the listeners. On their website, you can find exclusive and rare swim baits, JDM and BFS products, and of course, conventional tackle. I can't forget to mention Lake Pro Tackle gets the monthly throwback shop colors at the beginning of every month. Also, orders over $50 get free shipping, including rods. So do me a favor and remember to use code SCALES at checkout to save 10% at lakeprotackle.com. The vast majority of double-digit bass caught in Mexico are caught out of two lakes, Lake Bacharach and Lake El Salto. Josh Daniels Pro Bass Adventures is the only outfitter in Mexico with lodges on both of these trophy lakes. With a fleet of Ranger boats at Lake El Salto and Live Scope Plus at Lake Bacharach, Pro Bass Adventures has the best equipped guides and boats in Mexico. Better call Pro Bass, 480-491-9300 or probassadventures.com. We are Mexico Fishing. Staring at that peanut butter jelly like a largemouth bass staring at a dollar store worm? Then it's time to upgrade your snackulation. Meat Crafters line of handmade small batch pre-sliced salamis and our charcuterie make the perfect base for your weekend snackle box. Fill a Plano 3600 with an assortment of Meat Crafters old style salami and charcuterie and you're sure to become the boat ramp champ. Listeners of the show can use code Scales and Slices at checkout on meatcrafters.com to save 20% off your cart. The code can be used as many times as you want so you'll never run out of fuel for your pursuit of giants. So the next time you reach into your fridge to load up your boat cooler, skip the fish food and grab the stack of Meat Crafters pre-sliced packs. They're guaranteed to exceed your PB. Your favorite swimbait podcast is now proudly sponsored by Leviathan Rods. Leviathan Rods is a Texas-based fishing rod company that's handcrafted and uses high-end, made-in-the-USA rod blanks. Every sale from Leviathan helps support foster youth and their families. With Leviathan rods, you're not only going to feel a difference, but you're going to help make a difference too. Friends of the show will also get 20% off their rod purchases by using code SCALES20 at checkout. So whether you're fishing a depth 250 or a square bill, make sure you're using the best rod choice out there, Leviathan rods. Dang. So here's a good question for you. Did you buy all that stuff from a tackle shop out there, or did you have to order it all?
The rod I got from Eric's Tackle down here. The reel I ordered, and yeah, the line I ordered.
Dang. Okay. Because, dude, around here, like when I got into it, like 2015, 2016, 17, I had to order everything. They didn't have, like, there was hardly like Senkos up here. Like, it was that
Oh,
bad.
I gotcha. Yeah, this local tackle shop that's around here, he's pretty cool. He started hearing that I was getting into those big baits and everything, and there was a couple of other guys that were also talking about it. So he started carrying a bunch of like the ballums and all that other stuff, and just recently is now starting to carry some local guys that are just making their own type of baits, and it's pretty cool. You can go in there and get a couple of custom baits by some homemade guys.
Dude, that's pretty legit. That's a sick
Yeah,
ass
it's
store.
awesome. Absolutely. It's super sick.
So catch that 3.5. So you mentioned that you didn't have the battle shed white or harnessed right or hooked right. Did you
Yeah.
end up like fixing that bait with like some mend it and super glue, or kind of what
Oh
was
yeah.
your process after
So
catching that fish?
I'd never heard about mended at the time or anything like that. I actually would take a butter knife, heat it up and melt it down, and so then it would, go back into place. But it got so bad to a point where I was melting Senkos down to it and
Oh my
trying to
gosh.
make it back. Oh yeah, because there's large amounts of chunks just ripping down, and big old gash in the where the hook goes. And so yeah, I just literally lay a Senko down, melt that through, go make a few casts. Maybe it didn't last. Go home, fix it up, back for the next day.
Well, I will say, a couple of my citizens have gotten blown out the old style, so I do have Senkos ripped in there and melted in there for nose plugs. So
Okay.
I know the
Yeah, yeah,
struggle.
100%. Anything to do to get that one more bite.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you play surgeon with this, you play surgeon with the battle shad. Did you end up catching more fish on it after that?
I was actually I missed before I caught that 3.5. I missed about four fish before I caught that one, and then after I caught that 3.5, I think I missed about 10 or 11 fish
Whoa.
after that. And it's
Yeah.
because of the fact that I didn't really know to reel down on the fish and set the hook. At
Hmm.
3.5, I just got lucky and she just inhaled it, got a good hook penetration. But with the rest of them, I didn't know how to set the hook correctly with the battle shad. And so I started to put in a little bit more time these past 3 to 5 years of just reeling down on that fish, and then once it locks in, then you set the hook and really put that beast hook up in them.
Right. Yeah. So the problem here that I was having with the citizens and like HUDs and everything else is our fish would eat it, but they would eat it just behind the hook and they would just turn away and start to swim
Mm.
away with it. Like they weren't actually like
Oh,
eating it to get down to the hook or anything. They were just like tail nipping stuff and turning around and swimming away with it. So that was my biggest struggle until recently with the citizens and HUDs and stuff. And now I've caught a couple fish on them, and I'm like, oh, this is so easy.
Have you ever used like bait lube, like the swimbait underground bait lube or anything?
see, I had. Do you remember Bass Dynasty when they were a company back
Okay.
forever
Yeah, yeah,
ago?
yeah. Yeah.
So I had some of their stuff, and I don't remember if I ever had it for swim baits or not. But that's one thing that I probably should try out is like scents or smelly jelly or just something to just
It
to
makes a
mess with.
huge difference for me. I mean, if I get a short strike, I'll pull that bait up, put some of the bait lube on there, make
Mhm.
that same cast, and I'll get that bite. But instead of it getting caught on that short strike with their teeth, it slides past their teeth, and I've had them go straight to the back of the mouth, and you get the best hooks out of it.
Interesting. I am gonna have to buy some when we get off of here
Yeah,
because that
absolutely.
probably would help quite a bit, I bet.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm watching like 4 and 5 pounders like mouth the bait up here and just not even get close to getting the hook. Like it's frustrating to say the
Oh,
least.
I was having that with the Tyrant 8 this past few weeks. On that float kit with the 8. Oh,
Hmm.
I've missed about 14 fish on it before I've caught that 6 pounder.
Dang, dude. So I'm also
Yeah,
in a similar boat.
it was a rough
Is
one.
the fish are missing the hook on the floater. I've had about like probably 6 or 7 fish come up and swipe at it. And
Okay.
the one, it might have been a user error. Like there was teeth marks past the hook, like towards the head. But I'm just like, man, I could not buy a fish big enough to actually inhale this thing. Like I'm just not getting lucky with it.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, I've only caught 2 fish on that Tyrant 8 with the float kit. One was that 6 pounder and the other one was 3 pounder.
Dang, dude. So you fished the 10-inch, right, too?
I fished the 10-inch too as well. I've kind of slowed down now that the 8 is out because
Mhm.
it's just it produces a little bit more bites at the moment. Um, I don't know what it is with the lake right now, but they are liking that smaller presentation. I think we just haven't had any trout stocks. Once that trout stock comes, that 10's getting thrown for sure.
Right. Have you had as many bites with the 10 and just the same amount of hookups, or is it just taking a bigger fish to go after the 10, obviously?
Not so much for the float. I've had one strike on the float kit, which I landed. And it was about a 4 pounder, 4.5 pounder on the float kit with the 10. But I've had about 10 or 11 bites on the beast hook with the 10
Dang,
and
that's
caught two
crazy.
sixes or 5 9s.
Yeah. Damn, dude. So, wow. I guess we'll rewind back to the battle shad, catching your fish on it, missing a
Yeah.
bunch of fish, kind of learning to reel down and stuff. At that point in time, were you just fishing the citizen or the battle shad, or did you kind of start to buy hard baits or other soft baits at that time?
Yeah, so there was a company called Livingston,
Yep.
which was on Tackle Warehouse, and they had the 8-inch shad, and it was on the cheaper side, and I liked the weight system, how I could mess with it. And so I bought it and went out there and caught about a 3.5 pounder. It was pretty cool. My buddy, his name's Ethan. He's one of the guys that got me into swim baiting. He's seen me fishing shoreline one day. He's like, "You get your ass on my boat. Like, I don't know what you're doing. You should have told me you were gonna be fishing." And yeah, ever since we started fishing, putting in the hours on the lake, and we ended up he ended up getting me on that 3.5, and then there was this wall spot where I came in with the Livingston, and I remember he had like a 6 pounder under his 250, and I was staring at that, and all of a sudden my rod gets jerked, and there's a fish out of the water with the Livingston hanging from his mouth, and I was like, "Oh gosh, I got one!" And
Hmm.
I leaned into it, and she stayed pinned, and it was about a 3 pounder on that Livingston.
Dang, dude. That's that's pretty legit. So,
Oh yeah,
and that was a glide bait too, right? The shad glide.
yeah, yeah. It was all
So,
white.
so did you notice a difference between like the hard bait and soft bait bites? Like, did you notice your fish schooling up for a hard bait rather than a soft bait, or were you like learning anything different from your fish behavior between the two style of baits at the time?
When I first started, I didn't do too much thought process like that. But
Right.
once I got really serious into the whole swim baiting, like and especially like the tiny clash taught me a lot. Um, I really started to pick out what these fish were doing, how to fish a bait and when to fish that bait and that style, and when the soft bait will come in handy, when that hard bait will come in handy. And the huge thing for me is timing and placement.
Yeah. Yeah. So here it was like primarily all hard bait stuff when I was growing up and even to like last year, well, excuse me, to last year. And now it seems like the fish have kind of learned what the hard baits are, and now it's like strictly soft bait stuff. And so whereas out there it seems like, one day it could be hard baits, one day it could be soft baits. For like here, it was just like somebody flipped a switch and they're like, yeah, we're done eating hard baits now, which is kind of interesting to hear that you can have both sides of the story out there in a matter of a week, and like out here it just seems like they go in stents of one thing or another. It's kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, no, like this just this last few weeks where I caught my 8.7. That was a wolf pack of fish that was on that point where I tied off to that tree, and there's probably 15 to 20 bass just sitting there, ranging from 3 to probably 9, 10 pounds.
Wow.
Um, and so I just be casting off that point, and I could get them to eat a 250, but they wouldn't get hooked. I could get them to eat the Andromeda, wouldn't get hooked. I could get them to eat a Doom Rider, Tempest, all that stuff, anything that's just under the surface glide wise. But
Mhm.
for some reason, I could go out there, take a soft bait, a Citizen 9, a Battle Shad, a Tyrant, no matter what it was, just cast it out there. And once one committed and I went to reel down on that fish, it would pull it out of that fish's mouth, get another one to commit to that bait,
Yeah,
pull it out of that fish's mouth, get another one to commit. And that's actually what happened with the eight. I missed about 4 fish on that cast before I hooked that eight.
really.
Yeah.
Dude, that's crazy. So here, my experiences are you'll have a wolf pack, like you were saying, follow your bait in or cast to it or whatever, and these fish
Yeah.
will come up. And dude, I swear, like sometimes I shit you not, they like headbutt the bait, like go to stun
Yes.
it or whatever, or literally just grab the tail section, and then they start to
Yes.
swim away with it. You pop it off, you give it two more glides, and then there'll be two or three fish that do that, and for some reason like they aren't necessarily hitting it to eat it. They're more hitting it to stun it to maybe
Yes.
come back around to it. I don't know. I've done everything from when they hit it, you give it like one hard reel and let it sit. You just let it sit like dead stick as soon as they hit it. You work it really fast back, and for whatever reason, like they're really intrigued by it, but not enough to completely commit to eating it. It's
Yeah.
weird. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I've had that happen recently with the Tyrant 8. I've these fish, though I can get them to come up, they'll look at it on that float kit, but if I do a pull really hard to kind of get it away from them, I
Yeah,
see that they kind of get fired up by it, and I keep trying to pull it away a little bit more to see if it'll keep them coming, or because dead sticking, if you just stop it right there, they're just gonna turn away and
right. Yep.
they're gone. And so I've been trying to figure that out in the past few weeks. Haven't really gotten those ones to really strike at it. There's a couple of them where you'll just see them, they're just twitching, and
Hmm.
you can just dead stick it and just be like, he's gonna eat it. Just
Yeah,
let him
yeah.
have his moment. But yeah, those ones, man, when they just are looking at it and they might touch it or whatnot, it really pisses me off. I've had 8 pounders do it. I've had 3 pounders do it.
Yeah, yeah. It pisses you off when it's outside of your like power to do anything. It's literally
Yes,
up
and
to the
you're just
fish to
sitting there
eat your bait.
watching them.
Yep.
You're just sitting. He'll just swim around your boat, tormenting you.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know, like it seems I dude, I don't know, like maybe they'll eat one bait if it does something very specific, but and then other baits they just don't want anything to do with. I don't know, like my Tyrant 8 story has been I've missed a lot of fish bottom bouncing it, like with that top hook, fishing it
Yeah.
like a citizen.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so like I'll bomb a cast and I'll long line it. So I'll open it up or I'll open my bail and I'll
Yep.
I'll go further. And dude, I take it all the way down to the spool, like bottom of the spool, and I'll get, halfway, a quarter of the way, and I'll finally get a bite. And
Oh.
the problem here that I'd kind of figured out is unless you're long lining it, like those fish are gonna follow it long enough, and it's a kind of a like a heavily fished area and like heavily foot traffic area. So as soon as
Yeah.
those fish see a person, they know that's not real. So that's like why I've tried to do the long lining stuff, but it's hard because they're short striking it, so you're reeling down and you're kind of popping it like a jig, and you can feel the weight like come off, and you're like, okay, well that fish
Yeah.
obviously didn't have the hook. So it's like I don't know. It's a gambling game. Like, am I gonna set the hook and mess up this bait, or is this fish actually gonna have the bait in its mouth? And dude, I don't know. It just seems like I cannot win for losing at the spot I've been fishing my tyrant for whatever reason.
Yeah. My Taranate with that beast hook is absolutely thrashed because I've had days out there where I've had, I would say, 35 to 50 bites on it, but
Wow,
maybe landed one.
that's crazy.
And I'm setting the hook on maybe 80% of those
Hmm.
and yanking it out of their mouth. It's honestly that Tyrant 8 has held up great.
Yeah,
It
I
really
had
has.
I had a pike, I assume is what it was, grab mine. I don't know if you saw the picture I had posted on my story a couple weeks ago. Dude, it literally shredded the bait. Like, dude, I was scared. It was the first day I'd gotten them, and I'm like,
Oh,
are you serious? But I got home,
oh
had some
no.
working class zero glue, put it all back together. It's good to go. It's a little ugly, but
Nice.
I'm like, it
Oh,
still works, so I'm
and it'll
happy.
still get bit. As
Yeah.
long as it swims, that's all that matters.
Yeah, but I mean, like, dude, I remember I'd sent a picture to Marshall and Phoenix, and they're like, dude, like, did you put that thing through like a paper shredder? Like, it was so tore up, and I'm just so happy
Oh,
that
I
it's back
bet.
together in one piece.
I'm happy for you. That's a scary moment.
Yeah, especially because I think like the day before or 2 days before, or maybe it was the next day, I went out with a brand new pack of Citizen Sevens. First cast, dude, I saw this huge pike in this little school of bait fish, and I kind of cast it
Yeah.
over it and I long lined it. And I was probably 30 yards from that spot, and I was reeling. I was like, I should be going like right through that school. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if I get a bite. Dude, I kid you not, not 12 seconds later, I got a bite, reeled down, swept into it, boom, popped me. Just no hook, no bait,
Oh,
anything. And it was a
dang it.
really big pike. So I'm like, I should have figured that was going to happen. Like, I was a dumbass for trying to
Yeah.
catch that fish with 15 pounds.
It happens. It happens.
But it's okay because I had another one and I caught a very large fish on it recently. So I'm like, maybe it was meant to be. Maybe that was my sacrifice to the
Awesome.
soft bait god so I could start catching good fish on them.
Yeah, I have thought process just like that where, I think if I lose a fish or anything like that, I've learned to kind of just laugh about it. You can't
Yeah.
really get upset or anything like that because it's out of your control. Just kind of laugh about it. And
Yeah, you had said you listened to the Maddie's episode, and like that's like I talked to him how he dealt with losing that 10 on fork a couple months
oh
ago, and
yes,
I was like,
I was really in tune with that
yeah,
fork when he was killing it. Oh, I was
yeah.
so hyped when he was catching all those fish on the 86.
And then like he loses that fish right at the boat, and realistically, that fish may not like won it, but he would have definitely cashed a check and made it to Sunday if he would have caught that fish. And
100%.
he
Yep.
was just cool as a cucumber when he lost. He's like, oh man, like I just got to keep casting. And I'm like, wow, that is some composure that I don't think
Yes.
many people could
Gotta
say they
stay
have.
positive.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
always tell anyone that's on my boat, you have to have a positive mindset. Because if you go out there and you're just like, I'm not going to catch anything, you're not going to work that bait 100%. So
hmm
that fish isn't going to bite. And I'm going out there for that 10 pounder and she's going to want it perfect.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You got to have the presentation 10 out of 10. And that's one
100%.
thing that I talk about a lot on here too is like having confidence in a bait. Dude, I swear the fish know if you're confident in a bait or not. Like if you're confident in a bait, like
Yes.
if you're fishing it to it's 100% worth, even if
If
you've
your
never
if
caught a
your
fish on a
confidence
glide
are
bait.
high in a bait, you're knowing that you're working that bait perfectly.
Yeah.
And when you work that bait perfectly, the fish are gonna want it.
Yep. Yeah, and whether they get hooks on it or not is a different story. But if you're getting bites, you're doing
Yes,
something right. That's what I tell myself. If
exactly.
they're biting the citizen, that means they want the soft bait. I just got to figure out. I either got to stumble across the right one, or I got to figure out just the right little variable to get them to actually eat it all the way.
Exactly.
And I will say, I had success last year on the 6-inch citizen. Dude, the craziest thing that made a difference was putting a spinner on like a flashy spoon on the
Yes.
back. That's what made the
Yes.
biggest difference for me last year. And it was kind of crazy to see all these fish eat at the time, I like this, well, excuse me, at the time, the 6-inch citizen was like kind of, kind of scary to me because it was like a soft bait, and even though it was only six
Yeah.
inches, but I was just like, man, and I had seen these fish going after it, like not really eating it. I had come home and cut a spinner bait, and I put it on the ass end of the citizen. And next day, first cast, I had a fish just hammer this thing. I lost the spinner, but I was like, wow, like I'm surprised
That's
that little
awesome.
tweak made such a big difference in it. Like I'm so excited to go home and order spinner blades now.
Yeah, so what I like to do is I like to run the drip kit from Blinked.
Yeah, yep, exactly. That's what I got too.
And yeah, and I'll run that on a lot of my baits. And there's one guy I follow on Instagram. I can't really remember it off the top of my head, but he takes like the O-rings and puts it on the beast hook and puts the drip kit on there because he likes the blade a little bit more up more to
Hmm.
where it's in the center of the hook because he's realized his fish were biting wherever that blade was,
Really?
and that where that blade sometimes would sit would be towards the tail. So he
Yeah,
moved
so
it
like
towards the
short.
middle a little bit more towards where that beast hook is. So they're grabbing where that hook is, and you get the really good hookup penetration with it.
Dang, that's intriguing. That is something where you hear a guy talk about that
Little
and
things.
you're like, how many fish did this guy miss and witness come up and clobber his
Yes,
bait for him to make that
exactly.
connection?
Yes.
That's kind of a
Yeah,
badass thing to put two and two together on, honestly.
yeah. If you can get on a bite too with that, it's like you just figured out the secret sauce.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But so you catch some fish on that Livingston shad. Do you remember buying your like first wool like glide bait, like garage glide bait?
Well, my first expensive glide my mom bought me. It was $215 back when you couldn't really get the good Tiny Clash colors
Yeah.
anywhere else but eBay. And I told my mom, if you bought this for me, I'd pay you back every cent. And I bought Bass Tiny Clash.
Ooh, there you go.
And I went out there first day at Casitas and caught my personal best Tiny Clash fish, which was 4.5 pounds. And yeah, from then on, I was just kind of messing with that bait and kind of figuring it out. And I was doing a lot of dead walking, kind of messing with that slower presentation because
Hmm.
I had fished a lot of soft baits and the glides and everything,
Yeah.
and kind of wanted to experience a little bit more of a crank down and that slower movement as well. And I was fishing a lot of dead walk, which is what I got that 4.5 on. But then I started to move towards the spy bait mode, which was the V tail with a short lip.
Hmm.
And you basically go out there and you creep it like a HUD. And it's almost looks like you're not doing anything in the water, but it's doing the ever so slightest movement. And then when you hit it off a tree or something like that, oh, it would get bit.
Dang. So have you actually seen the spy bait mod they do in Japan with them?
Was that with the spinner tail?
Yeah, yeah. So they cut out the normal tail and
Yes.
just use the chunk of plastic and do that.
Yes.
Dude, that's
Yeah, I
like
saw that.
that's something I want to do out here because a certain time of the year, the smallmouth on Lake Michigan will sit on the rocks and they'll like clobber spinner baits from what I've heard.
Oh,
So, dude, could you imagine going
yes.
out there with a 6.5-inch spy bait essentially and just hammering them on the TK?
100%. Oh, that would be a blast.
Yeah, that would be super fun. And I think you could do it outside of just like that time. Like I feel like a spy bait's kind of a really niche thing, especially up here. And I don't think guys have really tapped into it. So I think you could probably hammer a decent amount of fish on a spy bait TK.
100%.
Um, so dude, that's sick that you had so that tiny clash bass was like an OG color. Like that's like the white box and everything. Or I guess the white boxes were the canines at that time.
Um, no, this was after they've already been released on Tackle Warehouse and
Oh, okay.
everything. So they were in that newer box.
Okay.
But yeah, and then me and my buddy, because the first time I ever seen a tiny clash, my buddy got a Cali Dream color,
Yep.
that really good trout color,
Yeah.
and the tiny clash for $90 off a buddy. He's like, "This thing's garbage. I don't want it. You want to take it?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll take it." Bought it off him, and yeah, his first day he caught five on it, and I don't remember the weight on those. And he's like, "Dude, you got to check this out." And as he's explaining to me how he's been working on it, and his cadence, a fish came up and smoked it, and from
Damn.
then on, I was like, "I got to get one."
Yeah. So was that around like 2019?
That was 2019, 2020, end of night
Because like
2019.
yeah, because like right around COVID, when COVID started, middle of COVID, before COVID, like tiny clashes were like impossible to get. I do remember that.
Yes, that's right. Yes, because COVID shut down the Lake Casitas, actually shut down for 3 months,
Wow.
and I didn't know what I was going to do with myself, so I went on Google Earth looking for ponds, and I'd just go pond hopping around uh, my little town that I live in, and yeah, I'd go to golf courses, and the golf courses would be closed, so you could just go fish their ponds, and we just go and catch a bunch of little guys.
Damn, dude. I will ask you when COVID or like when your lake opened back up, could you see a difference in like the fish since they hadn't been pressured like boat pressured in
Huge,
the last 3 months?
huge, because Lake Casitas is very pressured. That place gets pounded every day.
Hmm.
Even back when the water was down, there was guys out there that you would see every day. I mean, they just put in the hours out there. And once that lake shut down for 3 months, it was like they've never seen a lure in their life. You could go out there and they'd be tracking your lure, and I've had fish meet with my bait before it hits the water, and you'd already be hooked up before it even lands.
Dude, that is insane.
It
That's
it's
like,
unreal.
dude, so that's so crazy. And
Yeah.
I guess how long did it take for those fish to kind of key back on like, oh, these are baits? Like, did it take a couple months or take a couple weeks, or what was your experience with
I
that?
think it lasted about 2 to 3 months after the bites were. It was really good, and I think they reopened it. It was like right after June or August. It might have been July, but they
Uh-huh.
reopened that lake, and it was like that fall feeding time. It was like perfect timing, and these fish were just going at it.
Dang, dude. So it's kind of crazy to think about that and think like realistically 3 months isn't a crazy amount of time, but apparently for fish, it's like enough to go back to like their natural state of not being hunted. Like that's kind of crazy to think
Oh yeah.
about.
I mean, there wasn't anything like 10 pounders being caught or anything like that, but there was a consistent 5 or 6 pounder coming in every day that
Wow.
was landed by one or two boats, if not more.
Hmm. Damn. So I guess how big is the lake?
Honestly, I'm not too sure. It's I could look it up.
Yeah, I was intrigued. But yeah, like I said, it's crazy what 3 months of pressure won't do. And it's kind of crazy that you said it took, 2, 3 months for it to kind of go back to what it was after all the pressure had started again. I was thinking maybe like 2 or 3 weeks and the fish had keyed on to like, oh, we're getting fished for again. Like that's
See, that's what I thought too. I thought we were gonna have this bite for like 3 days because typically that lake, it's kind of weird where like back when the water was down and it was at 26% full, um, there was a side where you could go on, and it was like, do you want to fish murky or do you want to fish clear water? And the right side would be clear water, the left side would be murky, and you could just choose what you wanted to fish. You could go out there and throw a crankbait in the murky water and get smoked, or you can go out there and throw a vibrating jig and get smoked. But the clear water, you can go throw a glide bait, make a long, long cast, and hopefully they eat it before they get to the boat.
Yeah.
And you could just bounce around that lake, and there are certain days where you could get them doing both things just throughout the day. It was a blast.
Damn, dude. So I guess when you rewind to when the lakes and stuff were closed, did you find any good ponds and lake or like ponds and golf course ponds that like had good fish in them, or like were you catching decent fish for those couple months?
Definitely not. Though there was one pond that we could really go to all the time and catch fish out of, but there maybe your biggest was getting up to that 2 pound range. But these fish were just feeding on themselves. There was no bait fish in the water or anything like that. It was
Wow.
just bass eating bass.
Damn, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
it was a rough thing to look at because all of these fish are super unhealthy and just un not taken care of.
Right, yeah. You had said that it was like June to like September, you'd said the lakes were closed.
Yeah, it was definitely
So
around that time.
you guys get trout in like February, don't you?
Um, we'll get it from anywhere from November through sometimes April.
Okay, so did you guys have like a couple months of decent fishing plus the trout getting stocked in there once the lakes had opened back up?
After COVID, I don't know if we got any stocks. I think they kind of slowed down at that time with the
Oh,
stocks, and that's why our fish were getting kind of not as chunky as they would.
right, yeah, yeah.
And just in the past 3 years, they've been stocking the lake consistently, and we've seen these fish getting much chunkier and much more healthy, especially with the water up and everything. They just have
Yeah.
more space, more bait. Back when the water was down, there was not a lick of a tree anywhere in the
Hmm.
water.
Right.
So these bait fish had nowhere to go. They just get eaten right away. And now there's fish everywhere. You can't go to a spot without seeing fish.
Wow.
It's just a matter of getting a big one to bite now is kind of tough because there's so many little fish. And so I'm starting to just throw those bigger baits to kind of eliminate those little ones.
Yeah, right. Yeah, do you know off the top of your head how many trout you guys get like per truck?
I mean, it definitely differentiates with who we're getting it from. Sometimes we'll get private stocks from, um, what was it? Can't remember what kind of trout it was, but there'd be private stocks where we get up to 6 pound trout stocked in the lake,
Holy
and
crap.
there's some where we just get them from Fillmore, and they would be those perfect eater sizes that are 8 to 14 inches, 16 inches.
Damn. Have you like messed around with like the ghost or like the mother or anything
Yes,
out there?
I have a ghost. I don't have a rod with it right now. I need to get a rod for it so I can put some more hours in with it. But the one fish I caught on it was 2.5 pounds.
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess that's a
Yeah,
confidence boost,
I think
honestly.
he was 3 inches bigger than the bait.
That's pretty funny. That's like really
Yeah,
funny.
I love showing people that picture because every time I'm at work, they're always like, "Oh, they're not going to eat a big bait." Just show them that picture, and they're like, "He didn't eat that," and it's like, "He did." Surprisingly, I have it on video.
Okay, that's I was gonna ask you, do you roll with a GoPro in your boat?
I try to roll with a GoPro as often as I can because there is a lot of those people that oh, you didn't actually. And I just like to have the video. Or a lot of times too, I like to just watch them back for myself. A
Yep.
lot of times I'll lose a fish and I want to see what I did wrong. Maybe try and not do that next time.
Hmm.
Just little things like that that I could look back or just to watch it back for myself because
Right.
it's cool to watch back.
Yeah. Do you have a problem with your GoPros overheating out there?
Yes, occasionally, but recently it hasn't been too bad.
Okay, because I know like down in Texas, like they just cannot buy a break down there with GoPros overheating and stuff.
Yes. Oh yeah, I've seen a couple of stories from guys out there struggling with that.
Yeah, and like, dude, I got a GoPro 8 a couple weeks ago, and dude, that thing is so nice. I'm like, because I've heard that's like the best one, doesn't really overheat or anything, and I've
Oh,
had it for
okay.
about
Good to
two
know.
weeks. 2 weeks for now. 2 weeks. I've had it for about 2 weeks now, and I have not had a single problem with it. And like, I had a GoPro 7 a couple months ago, and that thing, dude, I hated that thing so much. But the 8 is like steps above the 7 that I had had.
Sounds good. Yeah, I run the 9 right now, and I
Okay.
haven't had a single issue with that one.
Yeah, dude, it's like it's kind of nice to have peace of mind. Like my biggest thing was always making sure my GoPro was recording because the GoPros I
Yes.
had before didn't have looping and stuff. So
Okay.
now that I have looping, like I don't even I think my biggest problem back then was I knew that I was like filming myself and I wanted to get stuff on film, so I'd be conscious and I'd stop videos after 20 minutes so that wasn't too much and I'd delete them and I was just spending too much time with my GoPro. But now it's like, dude, I can just fish. And whenever I like catch a fish, I can just press stop and I'll have a 5 minute clip of me catching a fish or a 20-minute clip. So it's kind
Yeah.
of it's really convenient. And it's made it so it's more convenient to actually record my trips now.
Yeah, I had a Hero 3 Plus before I got my 9. So I made a huge jump from a really old camera to a really nice new
Yeah.
camera. And with the 3 there you couldn't use the app or anything like that. And
Hmm.
so when I got the 9 and I saw how you could do everything on the app, it was like a huge game changer because you could
Yeah.
do all kinds of things on the app. And then it does little edits and stuff like that
Yep.
too. But yeah, it just gives you a little bit more versatility with it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot more convenient, that's for sure. Makes it not as much of a hassle to actually want to film your trips.
Exactly.
So get the TK, catch some fish on it. Caught a four and a half. You said your first trip out with
Yeah.
it. Did you like catch a bunch of excuse me, catch a bunch of fish with the TK and kind of like decide you want to try the K9 or anything, or kind of what was your
Oh
next
yeah.
thought
So
process
once
after?
I got that tiny clash, I really wanted to put in some hours with that one, and I kind of started to move towards putting in time with a lure, perfecting that lure, and knowing that if I want to ever throw that, I have that pattern down, and I can know what I'm doing with it. And so then once I kind of got over that, and I caught at least over 150 fish on my first tiny clash fish or tiny clash, I ended up breaking it. Slammed it against the pole on one of our docks, and yeah, I ended up breaking it. But I then moved on to a K9, got it on eBay, and 256, that cart
Oh,
color.
yeah, beautiful color.
I love that color. It's such a cool color. And we have a lot of carp down here. So I just threw that a lot, caught a bunch of good fish on it. I think my first fish on that was like 3 pounds, but then I caught a couple of fours and fives and caught that really nice 5 pounder on the dock with the K9. Um, and then once I had fished the K9 for a minute, I think I had moved to the Doom Rider. That threadfin pattern had came out,
Uh-huh.
and I started to fish that Doom Rider for a while, and man, did that thing get bit. It had that 250 swim, and by the way, here at Lake Casitas, 250, huge bait. Everyone out here throws them. And at the time, I just didn't really mind it. Everyone was catching big fish on it, and I was so surprised that I wouldn't throw a 250. I just stuck to throwing the Doom Rider, Tiny Clash, and K9.
Really? Okay. Yeah, I feel like the
And
250s kind of had become a California staple. So those fish know
100%.
what a 250 is. I guarantee if you would have came back after COVID, after those 3 months, those fish still would have known what a 250 was.
Yeah, yeah. It's I don't think I've seen an angler that throws swim baits not have one.
I mean, dude, that's hilarious. So
Yeah.
I guess when did you realize that the trout stocking meant like the opportunity of catching big bass on swim baits?
I started to realize actually once that water temperature drops, the fish at Lake Cetus, they kind of know, hey, water temps drop, these trout are coming. We should start staging on these points and ambush spots and all this stuff to get ready for when they come by. Those bigger bass, I've seen it. They've staged on bushes and right next to the launch ramp. And as soon as that water temp drops, they know and they set up for it. And once I saw that, I kind of wanted to learn. And I think it's now my second year that I want to put in a pattern with it on where these fish are staging.
Hmm.
And it's kind of tough because our water has been going up and down and up and down. So I want to figure out where these fish will stage when that trout stock happens, where the bigger ones will sit. But there's been a lot of fish that have been sitting out in the open and just sitting on an island or something like that that's submerged now.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's where the big fish have just been sitting instead of being out by where you get the trout stock. They'll just be out in the open waiting for trout to come out by our dam or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah. It's funny that those fish are so in tuned with something that we do, like the trout stocking. Like they know, not down to the day, but they know that, oh, this water's starting to get cold. That's when these trout start falling from the sky. It's kind of crazy
Yes,
how
exactly.
tuned. It's kind of crazy how tuned these fish are with something that
They
we
have a
do.
schedule,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They know
and
they're not dumb.
it's exactly. It's quite wild to see it happen and watch these fish like just react and they're just like, oh, we gotta go get over here before we miss our chance.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know. It's something to be said about a fish that's programmed for something like that.
Yes.
So you kind of figured out what the trout stock means outside of the 250. What like did you have like did you buy some HUDs or anything to
I surprisingly, as much as I had owned, as many HUDs as I have owned, and how much time I put in with a Huddleston, I've yet to catch a Huddleston fish, but um, I've gotten my bites, my fair share of bites on it. I hooked up on one of them and it came off, but other than that, yeah, I'd really slowed down with putting in soft bait bites or tying in with the soft baits and honestly just fished that Clash 9 a bunch. And I finally gotten one in that US trout color.
Yep, yeah.
And that was the real game changer for me is fishing that trout color. I used to think trout colors like I'm a big trout person. I like to fish trout lures. It doesn't matter if it's a shad profile. I'll throw a trout paint job on it. Um, and it's just cool to me. I don't think fish will make a big deal about paint jobs and everything like that. It's just profile and swim.
Hmm.
So I'll put a trout paint job on a shad profile. I'll put it on a rat lure. It doesn't matter as long as you're just placing that bait where it needs to be. It'll get bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and dude, I don't know what it is. I'm kind of the same way. I'll fish a trout color bait, but for whatever reason, dude, I hate like perch paint jobs like Perch
Yes.
K9 or TK. I am not a fan of them.
I can't.
Dude, I and like we have perch here. Perch is like a big forage for our bass, but I just cannot. I don't know what it is, but that paint job just ruins a bait for me. Like I just have no confidence in a perch color bait.
Yeah, I've never really had any interest in anything with that perch color. Most of the colors I look for is crappie, bluegill, and trout, and
Yeah.
occasionally a bass color.
Right. Yep. Yeah, that's bass is another one I'd never been able to get on board with, but trout, bluegill, and then like any silver hues, like they're definitely all shad patterns, but they kind of look like bait fish we have here in the Great Lakes. So
Yeah,
It's kind of like it's pretty much a shad. So that's kind of why I pull towards those colors, not necessarily because it's a shad, but because it kind of represents the forage we have in the Great Lakes. And I'm not
100%.
too picky. Like I'm not gonna not fish a perch bait if that's the bait I have and if I like that bait. But I don't know, that's like a confidence thing. I don't have confidence in a perch color bait for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's understandable. I mean, I can go out there and I'll fish an all white or an all black bait because of the shadows and whenever the sun, wherever that sun is placed, and there's a lot of factors that can come in place, and there's certain situations where I think color can come in handy with like top water and
Mhm.
having like a black belly or a white belly.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't see why color would make a difference.
Yeah, I was never really sold on color either. Dude, I love a raw resin bait. Like that's my jam. A raw resin bait, I doesn't need to have any paint on it. I don't care. That it just
100%.
glows underwater and it just is so
Yes.
good looking.
And watching those things get bit is so satisfying.
Yeah, watching it start to swim to the other side and you haven't even
Yes,
guided
it
it
just
yet.
disappears.
Oh, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to see. But
The
yeah, like that's
greatest
what I
feeling.
resin is the stuff for sure. Like the resin paint job or like just raw resin. It's hard to beat. It's a
Yes.
good tracer. Like if you have clear water, you can trace that bait 60 yards away.
Oh yeah, all day long.
Yeah, dude. What's your water clarity like? Do you guys have pretty clear water, I would guess?
It fluctuates. It changes throughout certain days and how the wind is. And there's certain areas that get blown out more than others, and it'll chalk up the water a little bit more. But
Hmm.
typically, our mornings will be quite clear because it's quite calm.
Yeah.
And then as the wind comes, it'll kick up and stir up a little bit throughout the day and get a little bit chalky. But it's nothing like it's brown or anything like that. It's the lake I fish, it's considered drinking water, so you're not
Okay.
allowed to swim in there. But it's quite clear and it gets cleaned out and filtered and stuff like that.
What's your like ideal like day to go out and fish as far as like weather and wind wise stuff?
Typically, I honestly don't make a big deal about it. I saw this on your podcast with Maddie, and you guys were talking about just timing and all that stuff. And honestly, I if I can get out there, I won't skip that chance.
Right, yeah.
I typically will just have a Monday and Tuesday off, and I don't even look at what the wind's looking like or anything. I just want to get out in the water, just put in some hours, see if we can find one.
Damn, dude, you're dedicated. Um, I don't know, man. Like if I'm at the point now where if it's not like my ideal conditions, I'm like, oh, I can just find something to do around the house, or
Gotcha.
I'll have to go record a podcast or Photoshop some stuff, whatever it may be, record some videos. And
Understandable.
it's just
Yeah.
kind of like at one point in time I didn't care, but now I kind of like have it set in my head. Like when it gets above like 15 mile an hour wind out here and like there's like big 4 or 5 foot rollers on Lake Michigan, I just kind of
Oh
think to
yeah, that's
myself,
understandable.
yeah, I just think to myself, is a fish really gonna battle this current, these crazy waves and stuff to come eat my
Yeah.
bait? Like probably not. Not even if I bounce it on bottom. Like those fish are out on the main lake sitting on in 20 foot of water where they're not bothered. I'm like, it's probably not worth it
Gotcha.
today.
Yeah, our winds, I mean, they get pretty good out here, but it's nothing like we get 4 or 5 foot wakes out of it. Um, Occasionally you'll get a boater that might put off a 3 or 4 foot wake towards you,
Mhm.
but other than that, it's nothing crazy.
Yeah.
Um, the wind, I love the wind. It really stirs up all the bait and everything, and gets those bass moving.
Yep.
And recently, in just the past few weeks, when I caught my 7 on the tiny flash, there's been a lot of little bass around that 8 to 10 inch range that have been chasing bait,
Hmm.
and then you cast your tiny flash into that, and that's how I caught my 7. She was sitting underneath the school of baby bass that was feeding on the shad, and I
Really?
think she might have assumed my tiny flash was a bass, and she ate that
Really? That's
because my
interesting.
buddy, I went and took him out, and or we went out on a guide with one of the guides out there, and he hooked up to a little bass that was about 8 inches and a 6 or 7 or bit smaller. Took it off his hook.
Wow. Dude,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah. It's pretty mind blowing. So I've been waiting to go out there, and I think tomorrow I'll go and throw a bass colored canine.
Hell yeah, dude. That's awesome. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, right now, what's the bite you guys are after right now? So this is what we're in halfway through August right now. Kind of, I don't want to say the tail end of summer, but summer's starting to wind down. What are you guys doing to catch your fish out there right now?
This year's been weird, man. I the guide I was just talking to, he had just caught a spawned like the fish was still spawning, and it's this late in the year. There was one or two fish that he found doing that, and he was tripping out. And then the next day, there was no fish up shallow, but they were acting like they were spawning, rubbing up against each other, doing weird movements up shallow. But it's just like every other area where there's always a pre-spawn or a post-spawn, and you can always go out there and find that one fish that's cruising that wants to just feed on a big old trout meal or something like that.
Yeah.
Right now, I've been on like a speed bite where you just are out there burning it. And that's how I caught that seven. I was throwing the tiny clash with the short lip and the transfer tail in mode A, and I was just speed cranking it everywhere. And she stopped me.
Damn. So, here it is not like, dude, fish will push up like around this time, like when it's starting to cool off at nights, and they'll think it's time to spawn again. Like it's like
Oh wow,
there's stories of guys catching fish that are spawning like up until September.
that's
And
wild.
dude, it's crazy. I mean, our fish, like there's deep smallmouth lakes, and the fish will only begin to spawn like in the middle of July. Like
Wow.
it's like I remember catching some spawning fish like July 15th, 16th, like a week or two after 4th of July a couple of years ago. And I was just like so blown away that there was fish on beds. I was like, are you serious? Like this is
Yeah,
crazy.
that's late.
Yeah, and I don't know, our fish up here are just so like it's not like a southern strain where the cold water necessarily like freaks them out, but for whatever reason they
Yeah.
just go stupid and they just think that it's springtime already or like it's springtime
Huh.
again and they'll start to spawn and it's just like you guys mental clocks off a little bit, but they know when the trout truck is coming, so I don't
Oh,
know what
that's
the hell the
awesome.
deal is.
As long as they're there for dinner, that's all they care
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, dude, I don't know. It's interesting to say the least. And then I've had some times where like a 3-degree shift in the water over the course of like 3 days just absolutely shuts them down for whatever reason. And it's like you guys are so bipolar.
Yeah. Um, I've had I've gotten on bites out at Lake Cetus, and there was days where you're like, oh, dude, the bite's gonna be like this for a week, and it shuts down the next day.
Damn.
Yeah, it can be a confusing lake, or it can be a hell of a lake some days too.
Right. Yeah. There's just no, it's just a toss up.
Pretty much, it's just if you're out there on the day, you're gonna be on them, and if you're not, and you're not gonna get on
Yep. Yeah, dude, exactly. So what's you talked about your PB a little bit. What's the story behind your PB? And then we'll kind of wrap it up here.
them. It was pretty cool. My one of my buddies, he's a guide service out here. His name's Fred Clinshaw. Um, he had told me about a fish that was sitting on a point, and he's like, she won't bite anything. Just go check it out, see if you can get her to bite something. So I went over and checked it out and got her to follow it, and there was another fish with her. So I was like, oh shit. So came back another day, got her to bite it. But when gotten her to bite it the second day I was out there, she had three other ones with her. And I was like, oh goodness. So then I came back another day and there was more with her. It was like six this time. And it just kept getting more and more and more as I kept going out. And it got to a point where there was about 15 to 20 fish sitting off that point.
Damn.
And that's when the Tyrant H dropped. And I'd swooped one up real quick. And yeah, I started fishing that on the point. And there was a couple of fish I caught on a 9.0 before that. Um, and then that's how I kind of got on the bite with the soft bait. of kind of slow cranking it through the trees because there's a bunch of trees off the point, and um, caught a bunch of little guys doing it. They'd fight over it, and then I'd finally get a good one. And there was a couple of times where I'd get a bite and like miss it, get another bite, miss it, and the bait would come up to the surface, and I'd get one to come out of the water and eat the battle shad before
Damn.
it sunk again, and
Yeah.
it was wild. So then I came out there and I was just like, we're just gonna throw the Tyranate, and I was bottom bouncing it through the trees. I pulled it over a tree, and there was this one tree. If you hit it in the right spot, blind casting, didn't
Hmm.
know how I was hitting this spot so well, but every time you hit this spot, these fish would smoke it. I'd miss that first one, which would get another one to bite, and it would just be this consistent bite, bite, bite. And I'd finally felt one lock up, and I couldn't reel anymore.
Yeah.
That's when I just jacked her, and I set the hook, and it locked in place. And I saw her come out of the water, and I was like, "That's a giant." And didn't even hesitate. We got her in the net so fast. I think I counted 7 seconds from the hook set to her in the net.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude, that's crazy.
Just absolutely manhandled her. She wasn't going nowhere. The Tyranate was in the back of her mouth and everything. It was perfect.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
That's wow, that is crazy. So I guess you just mentioned how fast that all went down and everything. And I was gonna
Yeah.
ask you this earlier. What like what are your setups? What's your gear look like?
I only use Leviathan rods now for my rods.
Hmm.
They're hard bait rods, the parabolicness of them and everything is just unreal and
Yeah.
it's perfect. Uh, it almost feels like you're not even casting a 6 ounce lure, but yet you're
Hmm.
throwing a 6 ounce lure.
Right.
Um, I bet that saved my back a lot with spending just a little bit of extra money.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'll throw on my extra heavy. I've been running a Conquest 300,
Hmm.
the new one, with a 110 varial handle. And then I was running on that soft bait rod. I was running the Corrado. It was a 4:7 to gear ratio. Kind of slowed myself down because I've been reeling those soft baits a little fast for the lake, and so I wanted a slower gear ratio to kind of slow me down. And then I have that paired up with a 110 as well, varial
Okay.
handle. And then with my smaller gear, I just got my hands on a Conquest 200, the DC.
Ooh, there you go.
I've been throwing a lot more little lures on that. But before that, I was using a Sitica and the Corrado DC.
Oh, the old Sitka. I have one of those too.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a fun reel. That's what I cut the 6 on with the Tyrant 8.
Dude, that's crazy.
That reel's fun. Um, and then I got my hands on the 2018 Antares Monster Drive.
Heck yeah, dude, that's awesome. So, what what do you what pound line are you fishing with your soft baits?
The Tyrant 8s, I've been running 15. Um, at least like floaters and everything. The bottom baits, the 7.5s and stuff, I'll run 17 to 20, depending on what kind of cover I'm fishing.
Hmm.
And then the Tyrant 10s and everything like that, I'll run 20. If I decide I want to go with the Ghost, I'll throw it on 25, but if I'm throwing thick stuff, I'll go 30 or 40.
Right, yeah. Damn. Okay. That's crazy. Um,
Yeah.
I will say I you'll laugh. I fished my Citizen a couple days ago. I'm fishing it on 15 pound.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, I don't know. I just like the way I probably could bump it up to 20 and be fine, but I really like, dude, I've been liking 15 pound. Like it's just a perfect in the middle. I don't think it's too much for the fish and fishing the Leviathan rods, you can kind of get away with lighter line because it does have so much,
Yeah.
it does load up so far into the blank. I don't know.
100%.
I might switch to 17, but so
There's
far
a
outside of
there's
that
some
fight,
moments where that lighter line does come into play,
yeah.
especially at pressured lakes. When Casitas gets really pressured, I do downsize my line as
Mhm.
much as I can. Um, I typically don't like to, but occasionally I'll pull out 12 pound with a tiny clash and
Yeah.
try and buy a bite with that. But most of the time I'll just stick to 15 and it does just fine.
Right. Yeah, 15 I feel like is pretty hard to beat, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Last question I've got to ask you, just because I remember when
Yeah.
I'd first followed you, you had posted like a fish in the net. So you've got your net in the water, you've got the fish in there, and then you have
Yeah.
your chicken. Is that so your
Yes.
net when it gets set in the water, it always sits right way up?
No, so there's an old guy that I know at the boat rentals. His name's Catfish Kenny. He fishes a lot of catfish out there.
Yeah.
He came around and he gave me that chicken because he goes through a bunch of trashes out there and gets cans and stuff, and he found that duck. And he's like, "Oh, why don't you make a lure out of it or something?" Because he saw me throwing the big lures and everything, and I was like, "I'll do something better." And I kept it in my net, and I call him Dale, Dale the net man. And honestly, it was kind of for jokes at the beginning, but he's kind of became like a good luck thing. And
There you go, dude.
I caught the eight. I got my eight in the net. I got my seven in the net, and I've got a six in the net with him. I think you'll just stay as the net man.
So if you guys are confused what we're talking about, Connor has got one of those yellow chicken, like the squeaking chickens with like the mouth that's wide
Yes,
open. It
from
like
Walmart.
lets out a hellacious noise. He has one of those in his net. And what I thought it was is like guys will put like tennis balls in their nets. So when they dip them in the water, or maybe it's golf balls. So when they dip them in the water, the golf ball sinks and it like lays the
Oh,
net out.
gotcha,
That's what, dude,
gotcha,
if you would not have told me, I would just have assumed that's what you had it in there for.
gotcha. Yeah, no, it's just in there for shits and gigs, pretty much.
That makes it so much better.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've
that's
got a
awesome.
couple of guys that have DM me and they're like, "So what's up with the chicken?" And it's like, it was for jokes, but now it's kind of became like a luck thing, and he's a part of it now, and he ain't going nowhere.
Dude, that's hilarious. Do you
Yeah,
have a YouTube
absolutely.
channel where you post anything, or is
I
everything just on
don't.
Instagram?
Just on Instagram and yeah, pretty much just
Heck yeah, dude.
Instagram.
What's the Instagram for the guys who don't follow you?
It's condogfishing. No
Cool.
spaces, no nothing, all lowercase.
Perfect, dude. And I'll leave all Connor's stuff, or I'll leave Connor's Instagram in the description so you guys can go follow him if you don't. I just looked.
Appreciate it.
If you go to Connor's page and look at his like highlighted stories, he has a couple videos of the chicken in the net, so you guys can know what we're talking about and not think we're crazy. So you can kind of put two and two together.
Absolutely. Dale's up there.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. All right, I got one more question for you. If you
Yeah.
had to go out tomorrow for your chance at a 10 pounder, what are you gonna go out and fish? You gonna go out and fish a soft bait, or what are you doing?
If that's what they're doing, if they're on the bottom, I will go throw a Tyrant 10. That's no doubt in my mind. If they're on the surface, probably go throw the Tyrant 10 on the surface, or I'll throw the Tyrant 8 on the surface.
Heck yeah, dude. Heck yeah. And then the last question I have for you, when you're casting it out there, you're casting your citizens or battle shads or whatever out there, and you're letting it sink down, what do you do? I'm the type of guy who checks my phone. Dude, I caught a fish the other day and I was literally on my phone for about 2 minutes because I was trying to find somewhere to eat on our way back from the lake. And dude, I think that's why I'm starting to catch fish on the citizen now, is because I'm letting it get down to the bottom and I'm not rolling it through the middle of the water column like a kai tech. So
I
I just want to
gotcha.
I want to hear what you do. What's your preferred method of letting that bait soak down there?
So Butch, I've talked to Butch a lot out here. He fishes casitas occasionally,
Yeah,
and um, Butch has always kept his line tight when he lets it sink. So then it gets that kind of forward swim towards the boat a little bit more on the
yeah.
fall. And I've actually had more success on getting the bites on the fall and getting a hookup on it doing that
Okay.
than I do just letting it have an open bail and fall.
Okay.
But I will make a cast out there, close the bail, and I will set on my phone. You'll see some cast catches on my Instagram of me just sitting there on my phone waiting for it to hit the bottom and then put my phone in my pocket and get to reeling, hook up. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. Well, alrighty, man. As always, I'll put Connor's Instagram so you guys can go follow him. Dude, pretty badass page, I will say. Like
I appreciate it.
seeing a younger kid, I say younger, but you're not much younger than me. But for the sake, a younger kid doing it, having success on soft baits that guys, dude, I don't know what it is, but guys are scared of soft baits for whatever reason. But to
I
see a kid my
understand.
age doing it and just having crazy success on soft baits, it's kind of like, oh man, like I should be able to go out and do this if he's doing it and
A,
he's catching all these
a
fish. Like
two
I should be
pounder
able to
will
replicate
eat
it.
a 12-inch soft bait.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. It's good to see, and it kind of, I don't know, like I was saying earlier, seeing you do it, it gives me confidence to go out and do it. I'm like, oh, if he's catching fish on the soft bait, I probably am able to too.
100%.
So it's always good to
100%.
see.
Anyone can do it. It's just a matter of putting time in on the water.
Yeah, heck yeah, dude. Well, Connor, thank you for coming on, man. Thank you guys for listening. As
Oh,
always, I'll
thank
have
you.
Connor's stuff in the description so you guys can go follow him. Like I said, super cool page. It's got a couple good cast catches up there, and like I said, check out his highlighted stories so you guys can see Dale and that man and realize that we're not crazy. But as always, thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll talk to you guys next time. See you guys.